So next we've got a familiar face. Many of you will remember Morgan Hughes as last year's winner of the Peak Guest Award. And today she's going to be talking about her findings on interspecific cohabitation of maternity colonies of nocturnal and or Benton's bats in woodland tree roosts.
Okay, hi everybody. I am going to talk to you today about interspecific cohabitation, and I'll explain a little bit more about that, of nocturals and or Bentons in a woodland just outside of Birmingham. Apologies for those of you who saw me do this at Brit Bats conference. Sorry you've had to sit through it twice, but I will, oh no, what have I done? Left and right, not up and down. Right, okay, that one, right. Okay, I know a whole bunch of you, but those of you who don't know me, I'm a bat researcher. I work as a freelance ecologist, and I spend a lot of time volunteering and training people in the field in sort of advanced bat surveys and stuff. And this project is legitimately just a side hustle that got completely out of control. It's nothing to do with my PhD. It's just really cool stuff that we found that happened in the woods, and then it is just sort of like spirals, and here we are. What I'm talking to you about is roost sharing. And roost sharing breaks down into different types. It could be conspecific, which is with other colonies of the same species. That kind of thing is very kind of hard to quantify, because you don't necessarily know if all the bats in a tree or a structure or whatever are from different colonies. And then interspecific is when you have more than one species in this using the same roost. And then also there'll be either timeshare, so they're using the same roost at different times, or cohabiting, using the same roost at the same time, which is a lot more rare. So what I'm talking to you about today is interspecific cohabitation, so two different species inhabiting the same roost feature at exactly the same time. Now, there are records of interspecific cohabitation. At the time when this happened, and I'll tell you the story in a second, I basically talked to Henry Andrews at Battery Habitat Key, and I was just like, how weird is this? Is basically the question. And there are time sharing records of different bat species using the same features at different times of the year, but cohabitation, there were only 8 records at the time that I looked at the database. I'm hoping that following this and following the new IR guidelines when they come out, that's gonna just explode, because I think it will, because I don't think this is that weird. I just think it's under-reported. So of those, the highest number of bats was 4, and 3 of cohabitation roosts, only 3 of them took place during maternity season. So these are 2 different bats in the aperture of a feature. This is a big wound in a beech tree. And as you can see, we've got nocturals and Bentons just hanging out there in the entrance together. And I know what you're thinking. This can't possibly be like a real thing, can it? They can't be doing it on purpose. They certainly can't be doing it for years in a row using completely different roost features in the same woodland and following each other around, could they? So this is what happened. I got this message from the friends group of this woodland. Morgan, does this look like bat poo to you? And so I popped out to have a look at it. You can see, I don't know if this has got a laser, but you can see the pile of guano underneath that branch in the middle photo. You can see the guano on the floor, and you could hear the bats as well. And so we went out that night with a really dodgy, like Aldi infrared scope, and filmed the bats coming out. Now this was in 2020. We all know what was going on in 2020. So it was really difficult to kind of like get out and actually do the survey work that we needed to. But what we tended to do was to sort of, working around all the local lockdowns and things, was to use our hour of exercise to go out and see what was going on with the bats in the woodlands. Just thinking out, didn't specify whether it had to be in the day, so it's fine. So we monitored the roost, and we're like, yep, there's bats in there. And then the next year we were like, oh, should we go back and see if the bats are still in the roost? At the time, we were pretty sure it was a nocturnal roost. So we went back, took a decent IR kit this time, because obviously it wasn't lockdown anymore. And 28 nocturals came out 10 minutes later, followed by 59 Bentons. So this was likely pre-birth for the nocturals, and probably not so much for the Bentons. We have surveyed since then, and we've had some different peak numbers. But obviously we were just like, this is crazy. Like, and I haven't, and this at this point when I contacted Henry, I was just like, what is going on? How weird is this? Because it's not been reported. I'm sure it's like somebody must have recorded this kind of stuff before, but it's not been reported to the battery habitat key. So I thought it's pretty weird. You can see I've got a bit of thermal scope footage of the nocturnes coming out here. Also quite interesting, we were talking earlier about thermal, the difference in application. You can see the bats so well on the thermal, but you couldn't have identified them with the thermal. We identified them with the infrared. So August, I was in Croatia working for Opwall, and I got this message from the same person. I've just been in the woods and basically your rooster's fallen down. So I called two of my volunteers and I said they were licensed and they had endoscopes, and I'm just like, can you please go out, check the feature, make sure there's nothing dead in there or nothing that needs taking into care, and then just get back to me. And they did that and everything was okay. So I think that at the time that it came down, the bats weren't there. And then we contacted the rangers at the site, who came out and were amazing and helped us to basically take the whole feature and cut it into 6 sections and then cut them all in half. So we were able to actually measure the entire feature, which was 6 meters long inside in this tiny little knot hole. And then we did a bit of endoscoping. I have some tree climbing, and basically just did a full examination of the feature. And we know from this, from where the staining was, from where the different colonies were. So we know the noctules were near the aperture, and we know that the Dolbentons were higher up. And there was a couple meters between where they were. And this is key, it comes in later. But you can see basically we just we took the transverse section of everything. This has now been published in Journal of Bat Research and Conservation if you're interested and you want these pictures. But yeah, so then we have been working subsequently. 2022, we went and tagged all of our roosts. I bought way too many bat tree tags. I still have like a stack this high, but then we did a lot of tree climbing and roost measurements of roost 2, because basically the bats had moved from one tree to another when that roost fell down. So they were then in a second tree. And we were searching for evidence of other roosts, and we found some very desiccated droppings. But then this is what happened in 2022. We kind of went a bit crazy with the project. I told you, it got completely out of control. So we went out, we're doing emergence surveys, we're doing hand netting. We found that the roost, basically we found another cohabitation roost, that ignore all kind of like roost 5 and all this stuff, but you can basically see we had like 41 noctules as a peak. And we had the noctules using various different trees, but by this point they had used 3 different trees over, we think, 3 different seasons. And I can kind of go into detail about why we think that they were together the season before, but maybe over in the pub later or whatever. But basically we found a lot more roosts. We did some hand netting and we started ringing. And then we did, when we knew the bats were both in a feature, which was, as you can see, this is the beech tree. This is the one from the picture from the beginning of the slides. We hoisted a baby harp trap up and caught up all of the bats coming out, the cohabitation roost. So out of there, we had 21 noctules that day, and over 40 Dolbentons, and we ringed the noctules, and we didn't start ringing the Dolbentons until this year. So, but then also checked bat boxes, which there's a lot of in the woodland, and basically kicked off our ringing scheme. So then this year, they're cohabiting in a 4th roost in another tree. And there's no shortage of roost features in this woodland. They're all over the place, and they readily will move from one to the other, but they will also readily do cohabit. So 29 noctules, and then later on, I can't remember how many Dolbentons were in this, but you'll see a video in a second. And then we're just wondering, how are they doing this, right? So how is it the mechanism by which these bats are not only tolerating each other, but seemingly just like following each other around and using the same roost all the time? And I thought perhaps they're doing it through resource partitioning in 2 different ways. Spatial, as we've discussed earlier, they're quite far away from each other, and then in the other roost features that they've been in are multi-chambered. So I have got some video, and you can see where the Daubenton's are coming down from the front chamber and the nocturals are coming down from the back chamber. And I'm just like, they're avoiding each other. They like the same kind of features, but they're in separate parts of the tree, of the feature. And then also sort of temporarily with the nocturals coming out earlier and the Daubenton's then coming out, they never have to squeeze past the nocturals to get out of the feature. And I thought that that's maybe, maybe how it works. But then this happened, and this was this year, and this was literally like 2 days before the last time I did this talk at Bats in May. And so this is my research partner, Scott Brown, climbed up with an endoscope to look at the new feature. And there's a sea of Daubenton's. You'll see a little ring floating around in there, and you'll remember me saying we only ring the nocturals up until this year. So there's a noctural, just like, it reminds me of that scene in The Simpsons where Homer just sort of like slides backwards into the hedge. It's like that noctural in the Daubenton's. So clearly resource partitioning is not that important. So anyway, the results so far, we have at least 2 maternity colonies, nocturals peak count at 41 and Daubenton's at 59. They've been sharing roost features in at least 4 different trees of 2 different species of tree, at least 3 consecutive years, but I'm pretty sure 4. And they keep moving together, and they do this all the way through the breeding season, and they've moved together during the same breeding season as well. And they both use several of the features independently as well, these colonies. So, and we also know from doing winter tree climbing and endoscope work that these trees they're there year round. So our ringed bats are in the same features. Sometimes some of our ringed bats are in the same features during the winter as well. So they're being used year round. And we've had multiple recaptures so far. This is the paper. And these are our roosts. This is all the different roosts of the different species. And the cohabitation roosts are the ones in blue. The other ones are basically the ones that they've used sort of independently as without necessarily evidence of cohabitation. Can't say that they're not, but no evidence so far. And then including our bat box data, this is how the bats are kind of like moving around the woodland. You'll notice they've got a different name. So each year we have a different theme. So some years I've had a Lord of the Rings theme. And this year was Star Wars theme. If you ever get a name bats, don't pick Tolkien because there's no girls. It's terrible. It's really, really hard. There's hardly any female characters to name your bats after. Anyway, so this is how they're going. And now we have, I want to say 75 odd bats ringed, and hopefully we're going to do a lot more before the season's out this year. What I want to know, and what I'm hoping the ringing will tell us, is more about philopatry, so fidelity to your natal roost, and just general roost fidelity. Which bats are coming back? Who are they with? And how much roost switching is going on? How much fission fusion behavior is going on? And the modularity. So the modularity is when a bat roost is splitting up. How big groups does it go into? Lots of little groups or just a couple of medium-sized groups, etc. And I also want to look at the wider landscape use. So we're extending the bat box schemes to a load of different surrounding woodlands. And I'm hoping that over the next couple of years, we'll start getting recaptures and getting more information about a wider landscape application rather than just this one tiny little site right near junction 7 of the M6. And it's just like, why are these bats there? But more about roost composition. Another side hustle is chemical signaling. We're looking at the chemical signals produced by the nocturals in a project with the University of Wolverhampton, but also how much all of this changes with season, breeding condition, and roost composition. So thank you very much to all of these people who have made this project possible. And that's it.